be um, fully funded, and we're going to receive some slight increases. And so I'm feeling pretty good, but wanted to just get everyone's kind of a temperature, if you will. Which of the following best describes how you're feeling about the Weatherization Assistance Program as we're entering in, or started in 2026? You let's see, I'm seeing right now it looks like most of us are kind of feeling like it's partly cloudy, but we're pretty hopeful. And I really appreciate that. I hear where you're coming from. Um, Being out and about in the network, I am able to speak one on one. And I think pretty much that is where most folks are saying is that, there's a lot of challenges ahead. But again, based on the funding and based on we're hearing out of DC, there's a lot to be hopeful for. One thing I am really hopeful for is that the average cost per unit that is currently the legislation that's currently with the House of Representatives that would bring our ACPU up to $12,000 from 8,500 to me, that gives me great hope. All right, so 70%, partly cloudy but hopeful. Thanks for that. We will continue to ask these types of questions. It really helps us, again, get a temperature on all of you. All right, let's go with our next slide, please. So the next slide is a shout out. Just want to let everyone know that today's made possible by the Department of Energy and specifically the State Community Energy Program, or SCEP. Wanted to just quickly shout out to the new director. His name is Mike Lee. We were able to spend some time with him last week in DC, to our project manager, Derek Schroeder, and our project officers, Katie Kajewski and Ray Judy. These four individuals that we interact with the most really support our work and the WAP network each and every day. I'm sure that you heard today's presentation is being recorded. It'll be available to all who registered. And then I just want everyone to just stay tuned in the chat as we go through the presentation, because you'll be seeing some helpful links and resources that the team will be presenting and sharing with all of you throughout. So thanks for that. Next slide. So who am I? I am Mia Harnos. I'm the Director of Energy Partnerships here at NCAP. And I'm really happy and excited for today's presentation. This is the first of four in a series. And the series is really aimed at lowering energy costs while maximizing the benefits of weatherization. Today's guest speaker, um, he is Mr. Jeffrey Holland. Jeffrey's the Director of Weatherization, Energy Conservation, and Sustainable Construction at the Baltimore Department of Housing and Urban Development. I really think we can learn a lot from Jeffrey and his team. They oversee the city's entire portfolio of housing initiatives. They do everything from homebuyer education and support to housing stock development and planning, permitting, inspections, um, and actually quite a bit more. I think what I'm most excited about sharing with you today is really how the city has integrated these programs and developed an advanced intake and case management service. And by doing this, they're really able to maximize the investment that that is being made in each home that they touch, and therefore improving outcomes for each of the residents that are being served. Not too long ago, though, Baltimore was deferring nearly half of all WAP applications that were received. But now that they're incorporating options that include lead abatement, asthma reduction, they do fall prevention, water conservation, they do window air conditioners, they do dishwasher, washing machine, and dryer replacements. The Baltimore team is quickly advancing toward achieving their WAP production goals. And moreover, through these advanced funding options, department is now able to serve households up to 250% of the poverty level. So they're really expanding the total number of households served. Exciting. All right, the next slide is just our agenda. We've already taken care of two of the bullets. So we've done a welcome, we've done some introductions. And throughout Jeffrey's presentation, he's going to be talking about the history of the city, the challenges, how they've evolved, and really focusing on centering people and cooperation between departments, again, to maximize the investment. He's going to talk about them looking forward, and then he has a whole host of links and resources that he has prepared for us today. And then we'll do some closing remarks. We think that the webinar will just last up until right at 3. So the next slide is the weatherization mission. We really wanted to launch today by grounding us in this mission. We know the program's complex. It can be really challenging to administer, but at the heart of the work are really the people and the families that are living in the homes that we're working in. You'll hear today how Jeffrey and the Baltimore team are living into this weatherization mission, putting people and families first. Um, so I want to thank each of you on the call today for your service and for your dedication to your organization, your clients and communities. You're all heroes and champions that embody the spirit of hope and remain sources of strength for those who need us most in these with these precious resources. So, speaking sources of strength, I'm really excited to introduce you to Mr. Jeffrey Holland. Jeffrey, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Holland from the city of Baltimore. I am Baltimore born and bred, and I love this city, and I love what we do, and I believe in what we do, which takes us to my next slide, which is just a quick history of the Weatherization Assistance Program. Well, you can click to the next, there we go. So most of you may know the program's been around for, this will be our 50th year, and it's been incredibly successful. I believe it's still rated as one of the most successful federal programs in the modern history of our federal government. So, those of you who may remember lines at gas stations and the issues we had in the 70s, along with the unemployment issues, the weatherization program came along and was able to, make a bright side out of that. So that's the history of who we are as a team here, I guess, and of why we do what we do and what we do. And then next up for us, Ms. Kendra, if you would, is a little bit of Baltimore. Baltimore's an old city. It's an East Coast city that's been here almost since the beginning. It once served as the capital of the United States. The oldest English settlement in this continent is in Maryland, and we've been here a while, and our buildings have been here for a while. So in 1729, Baltimore town starts. And then in 1797, we were incorporated as Baltimore City. And at one time, if you included Baltimore City and what is now Baltimore County, we would be the largest metropolitan area in the nation. And we grew as many old cities grew. We had a massive port, one of the best ports in the United States, and certainly on the East Coast, New York, Baltimore, Norfolk. We brought in everything. We were built on tobacco, beer, and sadly, people. But when the other way we brought people in was immigrants. Baltimore's Locust Point was second only to Ellis Island in bringing in European immigrants. We were the first, the East Coast grounding for the first national road and the turnpikes that connected our port out to the west. You may have heard of the C&O Canal or the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. If you like to hike and camp and ride your bike, I believe it's a 163-mile trail. And if you start up north, it's downhill all the way to DC. We also the home of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, which was a way that we opened the markets and the ports of the East Coast to the west. We had massive mills. We made sailcloth, we made flour, we made cloth and textiles for everything. And you may have heard that we had a lot of steel here. Baltimore had the Bethlehem Steel Plant, where we were one of the main manufacturers of steel for items across the country for years. We made wrought iron. Matter of fact, I believe that at one point, most of the wrought iron in New Orleans came from Baltimore. We had our shipyards, and the famous Baltimore Clipper was designed and built here. It was quick. It was also a good ship for pirates, which is another thing Baltimore is known of. At one point, I believe the King of England referred to Baltimore as a nest of pirates. So that's a little bit of our history. And I think if you meet many Baltimoreans, I believe we're kind of proud of the fact that we're pirates. We like to forge our own way. And I think we got folks from Detroit and Chicago and everything here too, and Philadelphia, our beautiful neighbor to the north. So I think we all have a little bit of attitude. I think that's good, and I think that's what helps us succeed. So if we can go on to what weatherization is to us here in Baltimore, I truly believe this, that in this modern world where the access to energy is so incredibly important, because to have communication and access to our information, you need to have energy. You cannot simply exist in our modern world without it. So this access, it's not a privilege, it's a human right. If we're going to have any sort of balanced playing field, it's a human right. We have to ensure that everyone has affordable, if not free, access to power and to energy. And I believe that weatherization can, by doing what we do right, it can correct some of the errors of our past. It can improve where we are right now, and it can brighten the future, because weatherization has to take into account sustainability. We need to be able to develop what we do in a sustainable manner. If we're going to go into a home and do retrofits, we are already bound by a savings to investment ratio, which is we have to understand the longevity of what we're doing, and it has to be a sustainable material. We do no harm. So take a look at that. That's something I think guides our team, that we take this seriously. It's not just a job to us, and we'll come back to that in the next slides. It's really important when you do what we do. So here's our challenges in Baltimore, and this may be, again, the cities I just mentioned. I think we have a lot of the same problems. Our median age of our residential homes is about 75 years. About 42% of our homes were built before World War II. That's roughly 123,352 houses. And to those of you who know Baltimore, Baltimore's housing stock comprises a lot of what we call Baltimore City row home. These are generally brick with 8-inch thick brick walls. They are brick face, brick side, brick back with stick-built wood construction inside. Many of these are platform built, which is good for air sealing because we don't have those big chases and gaps except around chimneys. They're solid, really well made, but they weren't built with a lot of energy conservation in mind. We will go into homes that have never had a stitch of insulation since they were built in 1908, because Baltimore and the United States in general had a lot of coal, a lot of oil. So we didn't worry so much about what we were going to do to heat our houses. We find out now that when we go into these old houses, either if we're going in to do weatherization retrofits, or if we're talking about the process of demolishing, we find there's a lot of hazardous materials in these old homes. Asbestos, lead paint. Baltimore City was one of the catalysts for lead paint reduction programs. The Coalition to End Childhood Lead Poisoning, which is now GHHI, the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, started in Baltimore. And we have learned through years what the detrimental effects of lead paint are in terms of crime, education, and just social ills across the board. Other paints and finishes we also find are old. We can find anything in a Baltimore house from anthrax to arsenic. I know that's two A's, but they're both pretty horrifying. You never know what you're going to find, so we have to be very careful. And again, that leads us to take how and what we're going to air seal very carefully, and leads us to understand that we need to have funding to remedy issues beyond energy conservation. You can take one row house in the middle of a block of 10 and take the roof off, and you can eventually cause the other 9 to collapse, because they are built almost as one big house. The walls are connected. Even the bricks are sometimes keyed together. You'll sometimes find that floor joists run through walls pocketed to the next building. Baltimore City has had an issue with vacant buildings. If you've seen that on the news, at one point we had over 16,000. And under the leadership of Alice Kennedy, who's the commissioner of DHCD, we reduced that to below 12,000 in several years, which is amazing. Through being able to change some rules and laws so we can buy back properties, we can, I guess we could say, convince property owners that they need to take care of things. And like I said, the legal powers that Baltimore City has worked toward to be able to make things right is great. Now we do have issues with trees. I was bragging about our wonderful tree canopy, but quite often you will have a row house that is 30 feet high and it's got a 65-foot oak tree in back of it. And we'd love to have the tree, but that sometimes isn't going to be great with the roots tearing up foundations and the branches knocking off gutters and causing other problems. We also, like I briefly touched on, we have property owners who may be indifferent to the plight of the city at this point, and they may be unreachable. We often find when we are searching a property to find out who owns it, that the owner has been gone, deceased, for 30 years. And there's a legal wasp's nest that just kind of unfolds as you dig through that. So we go into some more of our challenges on the next slide. Racism and economic disparity. As an old city that existed through the end of slavery, the civil rights movement, voting laws, Baltimore is sadly the symbol for the first two on that list. The redlining, the systematic and institutionalized separation of races in the city by economic disparity and disinvestment. The black butterfly is, if you look at our map, you can see the white L and the black butterfly, which are clearly delineated economic strata, where disinvestment, loss of jobs, declining focus on education have just left these, for lack of a better word, they're almost like a charred area in the map. We lost a lot of jobs as the United States in general got rid of factory work, those types of jobs. We lost our big plants. Sparrows Point and Bethlehem Steel were massive. It employed thousands of people. We had a General Motors plant here, Detroit. I know you feel that pain when they go. We made the textiles and garments. And one thing Baltimore's famous for was breweries. We had Brewers Hill. It was all breweries. Baltimore's German immigrants came over and we had a lot of beer. At one point, I believe when they were going to have prohibition on alcohol, the Germans were like, that's okay because it doesn't include beer. And then when they said, no, it includes beer, that's when home brewing started because you could still make it yourself. You just couldn't sell it. We also lost our commercial centers where we used to be able to go to shopping centers across town. You could easily walk. You could take simple public transport. We had our streetcar system, but that faded away. And if you don't have a place where you can get what you need to live, people with the ability and the resources left. They left the city, they moved out, and you didn't have any neighbors. If you don't have neighbors, you don't have a neighborhood. So what you care for is gone, and then disrepair happens and then decay. We also have an issue with food deserts, not just regular retail stores where you can go and buy your shoes and socks or whatever you need, but food. And that goes so much deeper than we can get into here, but just the health issues, everything. So you can't buy food, your neighbor deteriorates because your neighbors deteriorate. So that all led to urban blight and then urban decay. And as someone we don't like to talk about necessarily famously said, it looks like a third world country around here sometimes. And sadly it does, but that's something we work to fix. So we can jump on to the next slide. We talked quickly in the opening slides about whole house, and that's something that we really try to work here with our team is to look at the whole house. You don't walk in and simply look at with blinders on to see what a problem is, because in a house, especially in row houses, everything it's a butterfly effect where we can't go into a house and replace a forced air system if there's asbestos unless we remove the asbestos. And we want people to start to understand that as well, that the house as a system is the only way to operate it. So we'll go talk about ceiling fans and when you open windows, how things work. Everybody who's had a training knows about the stack effect in grandmom's house. But we take it seriously. And one of the things we're working on that is we'll talk later about how we're going to try to reclassify our field staff and how we train our administrative staff. So with looking at this and the whole house and not just looking at stopgaps and quick fixes, we are able to work toward higher levels of efficiency, both in the work that we do and in how we do our work. which enables us to provide more comfort, health, and safety to the people we work with. So luckily, and Amy, I know you've heard me talk about this so many times, that we're lucky in Baltimore. We're in the state of Maryland. We have a government in the state house down in Annapolis that understands that doing what we do is a good thing to do. And by having access to those resources, and that connects us to our larger DOE partners, we are able to expand services to provide more ways to solve problems. So if we can go into how we maximize these available resources. People. I've been trying since pre-pandemic to build the best team we have. And that's taken some time. Those of you who may be in the business, you know it's hard to find auditors, inspectors, and folks who understand weatherization. So I tried really hard to hire seasoned and experienced staff. I was able to bring in 2 auditors, Gene Buckler and Paul Lautner, who have experience, they have the drive, they've been in the business, they love crawling around cellulose, that's great. I was able to bring in Akintunde Bamadoro from the state of Maryland. He's now my project supervisor, so he's in charge of my field activities. And in my admin team, I have Andrea Jones and Amparo Maria Rodriguez, who I brought over from our intake team. And I have my longest serving best buddy, Aisha Barnes, who without her, I couldn't do anything. And she is willing and able to learn every new facet that we add to weatherization so that we can do what we do for the people of Baltimore. And we've been able to have a fantastic avenue for training through the state of Maryland, Maryland's DHCD, through a company called Everblue, many of you may have worked with them, to improve our field training for auditor, quality control inspector, healthy homes evaluator. I make sure that anything that's going to give our team that whole home ability is going to be there. We have an HVAC course we can take, absolutely. We're looking now to expand our training in hydronic systems and steam, because even though they're fading out, we need to know. We also need to get our team ready for anything that's going to be heat pump related, and to start to take a look into air to water heat pumps, which may be a real cool avenue for us in Baltimore. A lot of our systems have water distribution. If we can do that without having to replace that, we're a leg up. All our admin staff and even some ancillary staff who may not necessarily be in weatherization take our weatherization basics, which is weatherization 101. They'll take intro courses up to the prerequisites required for an energy auditor, so that they're conversant in the terminology. They can understand how to translate between a homeowner call to our field team, and they can also translate from our field team to our callers, or our homeowners who call in, because it is science and it can be daunting. And if we can have someone who can explain it to them in language they can plainly understand, we get greater buy-in and support. So this helps us with any training required by DOE or the state of Maryland or the city. Baltimore City requires that we have driving safety courses and that we are aware of Code Blue and Code Red, both for ourselves and for the citizens. We need to understand the impacts of extreme heat and extreme cold. So that keeps us safe, but it also helps us understand why, when we have our no heat season or our no cool season, we need to react quickly, stay on our cases, and drive them until they're done. One thing I've been working on very hard, and it's finally starting to come to some sort of fruition, to go from simply having energy auditors or quality control inspectors to building performance specialists, to where we were going to have, we'll pay you more, but we are going to have the expectation that not only do you know what you're trained in a BPI energy auditor course, but you understand how that fits together with the structural process of building a building. We need you to understand how in that 75-plus-year-old house, the plaster and lath construction differs from a modern drywall construction. The real impacts of balloon framing in a row home or a single family home, and to be able to look at that when you develop your scope. So we do have the expectation that our field staff will use that whole home approach every house, every visit. Even if we're going in for a quick no heat emergency crisis visit, they're going to assess the house, because like I said before, if we go into a home that has no heat and their heat is forced air, we need to make sure that there is no mold, lead paint, or asbestos, where we cannot replace that heat. So we need to look at what avenues we may have to ride down to solve those problems. And I want them to come back to the office with all the data they can have. Because if we can sit down and they know they have the data, the photos, the notes for every question we might come across, we can solve problems like that, look to what funding we can utilize, get the project done. Because leaving anything sit, it's not going to be as effective, and you're not going to have it be as complete as it is when you start fresh with your knowledge of the situation. So for our admin staff, we want them to know what weatherization is, and that it's not just light bulbs and shower heads, and that it is a science. And again, they don't have to know how to do all the calculations, but to have a respect for what it is, not that they're sending a field inspector or a building performance specialist out to look at something, but to know what they're sending them out to look at. So this enables the staff to be ambassadors of weatherization. So if we do an outreach program, we go out to a community center, or we're invited to do a presentation, everybody, all 7 of us, know the lingo, know the process, know the procedures, and understand that they may need to explain it differently. And we are so very lucky to have Maria Rodriguez, who can explain it in Spanish. So that fills me with pride every time I see her in the morning and come in. So our staff started off largely as data entry personnel, but we're working with them so they become knowledgeable in the customer service aspect of what we do. And that allows my admin staff, or our admin staff, to triage the cases from the first phone call. They can start to ask the questions. Oh, do you have radiators, or do you have vents? Do you notice tea stains on your second floor ceiling? Do you have any issues with coughing or being short of breath? And the other point of pride I have with us is our customer service. When people call in, they may be in tears because they have no heat, or their energy bill is untenable. And to get someone on the phone who understands that your concerns are real, and that we have quite possibly a real world, real time solution to what you're calling in about, changes days and weeks, then months, then years, then lives. So we do have Jean Buckler, who is in a leadership cohort. I know she's chomping to go to a next thing. So we're trying to build the next step in leadership. I will one day retire or die in this office. I don't know. But I want to have someone next who's got what I learned over all these years and is ready to go and has leadership training ready to go. And we're also lucky enough that since we have some cross-departmental work, I can use some of our training money to train someone who may be a rehab technician in our Office of Rehabilitation Services, or who may be a lead risk assessor in our lead hazard reduction program. So then when we have conversations, which we'll talk about coming up, it makes it easier to discuss what we're talking about, because we know. So next slide, if we could. Cooperation. Again, we are lucky. Baltimore City's Department of Housing and Community Development, or DHCD. Within that, we have the Office of Home Ownership and Housing Preservation, HHP. Home ownership is amazing. I believe I said at one conference, if you want to come here and work for me, we'll help you buy a house. And if you already work for the city, we'll give you money to buy a house. And in Baltimore City, we do have issues with income and lack of understanding sometimes of the mazes of taxes and payments and inheritance, and how you process an inherited property, whether or not you've taken care of liens. So we have a tax sale deferral program. So if through the system of laws that some of us, I find very confusing, says that your house is going to be sold because of a tax issue, we have a program in place to jump in and try to either stop that process or slow it until you can get on your feet, which I think is pretty fantastic. And also on that side, we have our summer foods program. During the pandemic, we were able to provide food for those in need the entire time. The crew that I worked with, Miss Asia Barnes, Timothy Wilton, and some others who filled in, Anthony Burden, we gave out in our housing developments over 80,000 meals. So that's another team building thing we did. We may not necessarily have wanted to do it if you told us we were going to be out in a pandemic in a refrigerated truck, but afterward, we still look back at the pictures and say that was the best time we've ever had, because that's Baltimore, and I'm really proud of that one. So our housing preservation side, which is us, weatherization, energy conservation, and sustainable construction, which we refer to as WEXXX, which I think is a funny word. We have our lead hazard reduction program and our Office of Home Rehabilitation Services, or ORS. Those three programs are all involved in repairing, replacing, and making right. Most of it's going to be owner-occupied homes, but we also do offer some rental services for rentals. We'll go into those three coming up. Baltimore City also has an amazing crisis services team led by Chanel Manigo. If your house catches fire at 2 o'clock in the morning, we will have a team there at night to get you into a hotel and start you in the process of getting whatever other service listed above crisis services on that slide can get you back in your house. And again, that makes me want to clap that we can do that. And sitting at the bottom of the list, but kind of as the umbrella over all of it, is the Light Intake and Assessment Team, which is leading innovation for green and healthy tomorrow. They are the central hub for intake. So through our 311 non-emergency call service, or just you call in to get services from the city, they have a team of case coordinators, case managers, senior social service coordinators. They look at your case, they see what you need, and they start to send you out to which of the home repair services you are eligible for or that you need. It's a lot for people to learn. We are still making sure that our intake and assessment team understands what weatherization is, what lead hazard is, what rehab services is, and where you go for this. And we have so many different grants and so many different eligibility rates. I honestly think it's probably a bachelor's degree required to understand what the heck they're going to do over there. I do. And that'll go into more training. In HHP, we have the Lead Hazard Reduction Program, the Office of Rehabilitation Services. Lead hazard reduction is led by a marvelous young woman named Catherine Taylor, came down from Buffalo to help save Baltimore. Office of Rehabilitation Services is currently being overseen by our Assistant Commissioner, Brooke Paluzzi, but there is a new boss in the wings, we believe. With that, we've kind of created the CHARMS, which is Baltimore's Charm City, if you've never heard that before. So, but CHARMS for us is going to be comprehensive housing, assessment, response, methods, and solutions. So lead might have an issue where they're not allowed to go into a home. They go into a home. They cannot provide lead abatement services in a home if there's no heat. We can't put heat in a home that has lead if it's a forced air system. So how do we come together to solve this problem? Office of Rehabilitation Services runs on different grants and has different parameters. Sometimes we can get all the work done by all three programs. And if you're looking at, we'll just use a number, that lead hazard may have $5,000 for you, weatherization might have $11,000 for you, and rehab might have $20,000 for you. Look at that. We're talking about putting a new roof on, removing your lead hazard, replacing your heat, reducing your energy bills, all basically in one house. So housing preservation, when we get together these cases, it's normally would have seemed impossible. You know, even just 5 to 6 years ago, we're able to, through coordination and communication, solve these problems. And it's a spider web that is quite often confusing, and we don't get to meet enough to solve the problems, but we're getting to it. Recently, HUD also had the Weatherization Cooperation Demonstration Grant, which we tried to work well with. It was just seemed unbalanced between what the rules were for HUD, what the rules were for DOE, what the rules were for our Empower program. So I think if we get a chance to come at it again, we'll be able to nail it, but we were able to get it, the skeleton up and in place. And again, that brings us back to our light intake and assessment team. So our ability to triage and look at cases and get them moving into a pipeline at a central location is key. All right, and I think we have our next cooperation slide. And again, being lucky to be in a major municipality, as bureaucratic as that may be, within DHCD, we are housed with code enforcement and permits and litigation. So we can understand what work was done on a property because we have access to that. We don't have to write a letter or get a Freedom of Information Act. We are the city of Baltimore. The inspectors who look at mechanical, electrical, plumbing, etc., They are DHCD, as are we. So we have the ability to verify what was done, see if it passed inspection, see if it was illegal work, etc. HABCO is the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. That is the Section 8 housing, the HUD housing. But HABCO is our construction wing. Baltimore City actually has its own construction company. We go out to a home and there is a deteriorating front wall that is in danger of collapse. We can get in touch with HABCO and have them go out and stabilize the wall. Sometimes, believe it or not, 24 hours. It's amazing. We're also connected to our recreation and parks, which is going to be Tree Baltimore, our forestry division. They're going to help us with tree removal or tree advice. And that connects us over to the Silburn Arboretum, who can give us guidance on what plants we may need to put in to a yard, what trees we could plant that aren't going to grow over the roof line. In our Department of Planning, we have an Office of Sustainability. And I've been partnering with them and going to the sessions with them to kind of learn what we are doing as a city. And getting the conversation to go from out of DHCD over to the health department, over to planning, over to recreation and parks is broadening the understanding of what we do. So everyone who goes home and at the dinner table says, wow, energy conservation is this. That enables us to do more things better. And if you can actually look up our Office of Sustainability. I think I linked them at the end, but they do some really cool things. And there's a bunch of brilliant people over there who are shaping Baltimore for the 21st century. One of my closest contacts over there is Miss Ava Richardson, and she is a little ball of fire, and she's inspiring. In the state of Maryland and connected to Baltimore is our Office of Home Energy Programs. And that's a neat asset for us because if you come into the Office of Home Energy Programs, basically meaning that you're having trouble paying your bills, they verify your eligibility, put you in the system, and you are automatically eligible for DOE and Empower and Maryland Energy Assistance Program Crisis Heat Repair. So we don't have to take another step. Ms. Barnes looks in their system, verifies that you are approved as OHEP, and you're in. We also have our Mayor's Office of Children and Family Services and the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. So we are broadening our ability to connect to people in need. As right now, we're actually working with the health department as to how we can expand what we do to add categories that are specifically for pregnant women, infants, and children. Because the heat impact on pregnant women and their soon-to-be born child is incredibly detrimental. And we need to start taking that seriously if we're going to work on what we do. And as we all know, heat is going to become more of a problem. In our external partners, we have the state of Maryland. Again, they've been here a long time. They've known us a long time. We get along together well, and we help each other out. Even though I stole Akintunde from them, they still like me okay. Right next to us is to the west is Harford County, and their CAC is great. It's a great source of knowledge. Gary Christopher is always willing to help us understand something that he may have been doing longer than I have, and I love that. GHHI is a nonprofit, Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. Started off with lead paint, but they do a whole home interventions as well. Civic Works has been in Baltimore a long time as weatherization contractors. They do landscaping, they do lot team, all kinds of things. They're also the house of our Baltimore Shines low-income solar program. MCAP is our community action group, and you guys, thanks for coming. We work with the Baltimore Social Environmental Collaborative, or BSEC, and the Maryland Electrification Collaboration Group, where we are trying to develop our plan for how are we going to electrify in accordance with the state plan to be decarbonized, to meet our carbon reduction goals by 2040. Baltimore is also home to some pretty good universities. Johns Hopkins University you may have heard of. And then up in State College, we have Penn State. We click over to the next one if we could. We're going to expand our interaction with academic institutions. We want to get involved with Morgan State University, has a marvelous engineering program, and the University of Maryland. And to start to get data from research to back what we all know to be true, which is going to be, heat affects your ability to sleep, which affects your ability to learn, which affects your ability to avoid incarceration. So that's how we do what we do. And we've got a lot of positives, a lot of benefits there. And looking forward, we do still face challenges. Awareness of the issues. We have to act now. And we often talk when we go to the Code Red meetings that people don't take heat seriously, because if you look at what people are doing when it's hot outside, they're running around in their They look beautiful. Their hair is perfect. They're at the beach and it's hot and they're having a great time, but it's hard to start to get the message out that heat is going to become a health hazard as we go on, not just for older folks, not just for people with respiratory issues, but we need to start to act now. And that's going to mean reducing the energy burden on people who are going to need to pay for air conditioning. It's a fact, and we need to do it. So we work on raising that concern either with our legislatures to say, look, we need to start taking this seriously. And one of the ways we do that, of course, is with our academic institutions proving it. That goes to our increased heat. It can be rough. So show of hands, how many of you live in an old city with tall buildings and blacktop and it gets really, really hot and they have that song, Hot Summer in the City, and it's hot. Does anybody, you stand there on the bus stop on the blacktop and your bottom of your shoes get so hot, your feet hurt. But we have an aging infrastructure. Right now, they've recently put up the signs that they're going to be no parking in the neighborhood I live in for, I think, 2 or 3 blocks, because they're going to have to take up some water lines. That's serious. Baltimore's got old water lines. We've got above ground power lines. We've got old gas lines. We've got old conduits. We've got old buildings. So we need to figure out what we're going to do with this. How are we going to, who's going to pay? If we're going to electrify everybody's house, who is going to pay the grid? I'll leave that question to you guys. You can write in answers later. Another solution that we're looking at, and I've touched on briefly, is air to water heat pumps. Everybody understands air to air, but over here in the United States, we don't go into air to water, but that's a hydronic system that doesn't heat air. It heats water and heats radiators. And if you've ever lived in a house that has radiant heat with hot water or steam, it's warm. And it warms the building, not the air. I think it's a better way. And also, we don't force air around. With our aging housing stock that has those hazards I mentioned in the beginning, I don't always want to push air around. So Akintunde and I recently met with a boiler company to start to talk about what the future is in air to water boilers, heat pumps. So that's a neat avenue to look into. We're also talking about community ground source heating. BGE, Baltimore Gas Electric, or Exelon is starting a project where they're going to look into how do they develop a ground source heat system that can be used for a community. It's not just one house, it's for a block. And that's block by block approach is something that DHCD from Alice Kennedy on down has been part of our thought process. You can't do house by house. You have to do block by block and neighborhood by neighborhood to solve these problems, because you have to look at the whole block of row houses as another version of whole home. And the other thing is you're not going to get it done in time if you go house by house. So community solar is another thing that we're looking into. We have space. We have vacant lots. Rather than turn them into vacant lots, we can turn them into a useful source for solar. So through that and our greater involvement with academic institutions, we want to get this plan built on data and science. And again, house by house, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. And we want to drive the market by proving that these measures worked in our most impacted areas. My feeling, and I think the feeling of quite a few people, is that if we take and lead the way and make our historically disenfranchised residents the vanguard of progress, those who can afford to do it will follow. If we can say that, look, these folks over here in Sandtown, Winchester, where our office is, they are not paying a tenth of what they paid for energy 30 years ago. And you can do the same thing. You buy it, and then the market will support us because we are pushing buyers to a market simply by demonstrating that it works. So maybe we get more buy-in to fund what we do. All right. So that's basically what we do, what we're looking forward to. I have a fantastic team. I love getting together with you guys. I think the future is bright. I think as long as we keep doing what we do, where we do it, and maybe not worry about the top of the umbrella, we're going to be able to get things done. One thing is, energy is a big money game. So I think we'll keep being funded to do what we do. And here are some links. Visit Baltimore. Come on in. Take a look around. See what we do. Matter of fact, get in touch with me. Come by, visit. We'll take you on a tour. I'll send you out with an auditor. And you're ready to go. But if anybody has any questions, let me know. Put them in the chat.
Jeffrey, we do. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that. Again, I wasn't hopeful in the beginning. I am hopeful now. Um, One of the questions that came in is regarding the city's successful, if any, integration with health-related partners. Um, with example being asthma potentially
Oh,
as a
yes.
value add. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So years ago, we worked with the Maryland Department of the Health Department in Maryland to kind of start a study about indoor air quality, where we were monitoring indoor air quality pre and post interventions to see what, if anything, occurred. Because we're very mindful, again, of air sealing you in a house that may have dust. So a big part of that is going to be for us too is homeowner education. What is housekeeping? What does it mean? And we start to talk about things that, like, is carpet good for your house? If we come into a house and we're going to air seal and they've had, the home has had the same carpet in it for 25 years, and they've had cats and dogs and kids running in and out and running through playgrounds that may have had lead paint, or, somebody worked in a mechanic shop where they had asbestos breaks. What do we do with that carpet? Does it make sense to fund the removal of that carpet? And I think so. So we do work with Maryland Department of Health, and we work with Baltimore City Health Department. And asthma and respiratory ailments are a serious look at what we do. And with our approach to the whole home, IAQ, or indoor air quality, is often a great leverage point for us. If I tell someone that we need to get additional funding because not only will this measure reduce energy costs, but it will improve indoor air quality, that is quite often an automatic checkoff on a list of approval. So we present it by saying, by removing this carpet, we will remove this percentage of airborne irritants to improve the indoor air quality for this asthmatic person. And we explain it. We use clear but scientific terminology, and quite often that solves problems. Was that why you were going? I don't know. I didn't see you ask that question.
I think so. I think that really helped. I think you know, what I've heard over time is that it's really hard in some cases to get folks to let go of the carpet. They love it. They enjoy, um, you know, it's
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
It's in their home. They prefer it. It makes maybe the home look nicer.
Right.
Um, yes. And so, maybe it's an insulation, Abby kind of pointed that out. And then, I've heard also about some in terms of air quality that there are some cleaners, carpet cleaners, HEPA cleaners that sometimes can help, with folks who just do not want to let go
Some,
of those carpets. So yeah.
Sometimes what I've done is, if you can pull up the carpet and you show them what has gone through the carpet, sits below the carpet, and quite often you'll pull up a 5, 10, maybe 20-year-old piece of wall-to-wall carpeting, and what was at one time the padding is now dust. You're never going to vacuum that up. And one thing that we're really, lucky with here is that Paul and Jean, our auditors, are communicative and they understand what they're saying. And what that does for us as a team is that builds the legitimacy. So if they come in your house and the homeowner says, what about the air? What about the dust? And you have the prestige of being the building performance specialist, say, well, let me explain this to you. The gradual deterioration of the chemicals in that carpet, it cannot be made healthy. Dalton, Georgia, and the hub of wall-to-wall carpet for the past 60, 70 years, it's a toxic place. And so I think that prestige of having certified building performance specialists who come in with certifications and knowledge, but are also personable and able to get that across to a homeowner, helps us get past that. Because we can always say, well, let me show you. Let me prove it to you. And when we put the blower door in the house. And we, unless someone is totally not concerned about what we're doing, we will explain to that homeowner, that resident, what we are doing. And we will show them, we'll take them over to a light switch and say, feel that air? And explain to them that, a cubic foot of air, which we're measuring in, is about the size of a milk crate. So if you're paying whatever money you're paying to heat that cubic foot of air, this is how many of those are leaving your house every hour. And we kind of break it down into, these are the pennies you put in the bucket, this is the bucket going outside. And that helps. But then with the health aspects, I think we are getting a more educated populace in terms of what's bad. And I think people are starting to understand that maybe a lot of the things that we were sold in the 70s as being, better living through chemistry really are not. And I do think that Baltimore City's reputation and service and being out there in the house with, doing what we do in the home, it changes the way they perceive our ability to express the science to them. And they buy in.
Thanks, Jeffrey. We have a question from Richard. Richard is asking if you know where folks can find typical returns on investment from different interventions. Um, Examples given: installation of wall, attic, basement, caulking, and weather stripping, from including appliances, Energy Star, power strips, solar hot water. So for the measures or interventions, I don't want to say measures because they're not all measures, but do you have a recommendation on a good source for return on investment? And
Most modeling software, like we use Hancock software, has a built-in logarithm that will calculate the savings to investment ratio, and they'll be based on the estimated or calculated lifespan of the product. So we'll say, okay, if we're going to put in R49, roughly 16 inches of cellulose insulation in an attic, we expect that to last, was it 17 years, I believe, somewhere like that. So over the span of 17 years, how much will that reduce your bill so it pays for itself? So we try to maintain what's the DOE has their savings to investment ratio, and then Empower has their own. But to break it down bit by bit, I think, if you looked at caulking, weather stripping, you'd have to lump that all into an air sealing calculation. And then for insulation, you'd have to look at that in terms of your heat loss reduction. But again, that's all going to go into what's your volume, what's your square foot calculation of your R value, changes. And then we do, when necessary, meter appliances. So we can say, well, your current, although we also look at the age. If you've got a 32-year-old refrigerator, I can guarantee you the one I go get right now is going to be better. So that's, we don't get into the math of every single one, Richard, but we do look at our logarithm. For heat pumps and moving to electric, we are having the challenge of, everybody knows that right now electric is going to be more expensive. In Baltimore City, you can heat with gas for a fraction of the cost it costs to heat with electric. But yeah, to get those returns, you can find them online. One of the issues I find is that quite often that return on investment is kind of sponsored by a manufacturer, and sometimes they can be a little tilted. But if you do use a modeling software, or of modeling softwares, you can look into them to see how they calculate that SIR.
thanks, Richard. Thanks, Jeffrey and Richard, for the question. Next week, we are hosting another webinar specifically on SIR, it's going to take place on the 17th. So how you registered for this webinar, hopefully you registered for the next one, and we'll be digging in to that. Another question, I think we just have a couple more minutes, is are you using GIS to analyze census and housing data to
We
target
have an
outreach?
amazing team of data analysts. We have a system called CodeMap, which is built off of the state of Maryland SDAT, the state data system. So we can go into CodeMap, we can pull up an address, we can get neighborhood demographics, we can get a breakdown of the economic snapshot of that neighborhood, and we can look at, we can look at everything. We can look at every bit of census that's been entered into the system since the last go round.
Nice. And then I think our last question that we have time for is just regarding fire and EMS. The question is, have you had an opportunity to work with fire prevention or EMS from a healthy homes perspective? Any collaborations between you, EMS, and law enforcement?
Oh, well, code enforcement, they're across the hall. So we do interact with them. And one of the issues that we do kind of have, and you'll hear this talked about in a lot of conversations, is how do we get entrenched code enforcement to embrace the change, because it's going to make their job harder. If we say we're no longer going to use the gas systems that you're used to inspecting and checking out, but we're going to move to a ground source heat pump, they're going to have to learn something else. So that's something to work with. But we do collaborate with code enforcement to verify mechanical inspections, electrical inspections, plumbing inspections, to see if there are any violations on a property, because we really can only do so much work in a property that has notifications and violations, because their property is breaking the law. It also gives us an ability to check and see, hey, we went in the property and it looks like a new furnace, but I don't see any permit. So then we take a step back and say, okay, if this wasn't inspected and we don't know if it's code compliant, we have to approach it differently than if we know it was installed according to the rules. For fire and EMS, our big connection is going to be health department, because they collect data from our Baltimore City Fire Department. If they're coming across a certain trend, that's going to come into our Baltimore City Health Department, one of the oldest health departments in the nation, and they're amazing. So we look at that, but we also get in conversations with planning and code and the fire department about sprinkler systems, because
Thank you.
fire in row houses is a serious problem.
So we are Richard, thank you so much. We're coming up at the end of the session. I really want to thank you. Like I said, you have so much to offer. NCAP is so grateful for your willingness to share the
Thank you.
journey that you and your team have been on. And I just also want to mention and thank you for serving on our energy task force, because not only are you leading the way in Baltimore, but by serving on a task force, you're really helping me and the national partnership to make the entire network stronger and better. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for that. Um, the next couple of slides, um, the you can subscribe to, if you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe to the Weatherization Plus e-news. It comes out weekly. Every other week, there's a little bit of a longer issue, and then there's some promo issues that come out. But you want to keep in touch with us and be in the know. That's the easiest way to do that. The next slide is featuring. We've got three more of these. Um, Going into the rest of this month and the first week of March. And again, SIR, we've got one coming up on the softer skills behind weatherization. And then the Wednesday, March 4th, there's a LIHEAP transfer webinar. We've heard that a lot of folks would like to hear about that. The program, next slide is the program that Jeffrey mentioned, that Ms. Buckler attended. It's NCAP's WAP Pro Leadership Development Institute. We're taking 40 applicants this go round. If you have someone you want to nominate or you want to be part of, it's a free leadership institute made possible by the Department of Energy. And so we are currently accepting applications. Encourage you to do that. And then just visit us at the website, uh, nationalcommunityactionpartnership.com. Look for the energy partnership pages, and you should be able to find some pretty good content, new, refresh content there. And then our last slide is we're here to help. Connect with us. You can email us at energycommunityactionpartnership.com. You can email me directly, or you can visit our website. So sorry we kept you just a couple minutes after. We really want to thank you again for being here. Shout out to Jeffrey and the amazing work you're doing in Baltimore. We'll be watching. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you next week, Tuesday. All the best.
Take care, everybody.